Good morning, buenos dias. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I am your host, Cliff Sargent. Roberto Bolaño, 2666666. I never really understood how somebody was supposed to say the title. That's great. It still got me wondering. So much mystery. This is for George Rainoff, who just suggested I review some Bolaño. Good call. When I was about 20 years old, 19 or 20 years old, this was the book that actually got me back into reading fiercely and seeking out literature. My go-to is Bolaño. I'd read a few other hefty novels when I was a teenager, but this was really the one that kicked off the search for great literature. And what a perfect gateway drug. It's been 5 or 6 years since I've read it, but Bolaño still remains one of my absolute favorite authors. And there's a great story behind this book as well, so let's get right to it. So 2666 was a race against time for Bolaño. He was quite literally dying while he was writing it, and a month before he died, he said that there were about 1,000 pages that still had to be revised. So, what you get is what you get. So it was essentially unfinished. Roberto Bolaño spent a lot of his life in Spain and probably considers himself Spanish, but he was born in Chile and was present for the military extravaganza started by Augusto Pinochet. So in his younger years, after getting involved with some left-wing politics in Mexico City where he was living, in 1973 he took off back to Chile to go and support the socialist regime of Salvador Allende. Allende was overthrown and murdered in a coup staged by Augusto Pinochet, a right-wing dictator, who was then responsible for the torture and murder of many perceived enemies. Bolaño, being the dangerous left-wing poet that he was of course one of these perceived enemies, and was subsequently locked up. He was arrested on suspect of being a terrorist. Then he was actually saved by two of his former friends who had grown up to become prison guards. Can't make that shit up. Unless, of course, he was. So in the early 80s, Bolaño took off for Europe. He settled in Barcelona, hung out there for a while, and then he settled on a small town near Barcelona called Blanes, a little town on the Costa Brava where he would remain for the rest of his life. Like I said before, Roberto Bolaño is the best gateway drug to any new reader of Latin American fiction. Mostly because he doesn't abide by the rules at all. He has certainly influenced and admits his love for people like Borges or Cortázar, but in no way is he trapped inside magical realism or some bullshit. Bolaño is on his own shit. Bolaño is his own shit. And 2666 is the last nail in the coffin to prove it. Ooh, that was pretty dark. He claimed he was a poet first and foremost, but in the early 90s he started to write fiction, he claims, in order to support his children and family. This is his magnum opus. Literally, he was racing against time to finish it. 5 parts, and they even found a 6th after it was published. 5-part epic tied together by the murders in a fictional town called Santa Teresa, which is based directly off of Ciudad Juarez on the border of the US and Mexico. There have been hundreds of murders of young girls in Ciudad Juarez for the last, a long time. Anybody out there been to Juarez? Driven along the border? It's a scary fucking place. The world is a strange, scary, mysterious, beautiful, violent, humorous, but ultimately tragic place to be, and especially in Bolaño's literature. So, I think you would agree. Anyways, by the end of the book we eventually see how these 5 stories are connected, and this is over 1,000 pages, but it's actually a pretty easy read. You shouldn't be intimidated by it at all. It's pretty good. The first story concerns 4 literary critics who are searching for a German writer named Benno von Archimboldi. This is actually my favorite story out of all of them. Just these 4 obsessed literary critics who are searching for this extremely mysterious and elusive writer. And they hear from a very unlikely source that he is in Santa Teresa. The second story concerns a single dad who moved with his daughter from Barcelona to Santa Teresa and is of course worried about her safety and her becoming a victim to these murders. The third story is about a New York journalist named Oscar Fate who is sent to Santa Teresa to cover a boxing match, and this is something he knows nothing about, but subsequently, while he's there, he meets another journalist who is covering the murders, and he begins to become very interested in what's going on around him. And this eventually leads to him getting an interview with the prime suspect of these murders, who is a German man named Klaus Haas. Which leads us into the fourth story, which is all about Klaus Haas and him in prison, and then all about the murders. A real significant part, and the real dividing factor among readers of this book, is the descriptions of the girls and the ways that they were murdered. It's often so emotionally removed as to seem almost like a straight crime scene report. But then often very subtly there will be an anecdote about their personal lives, or their hopes, or family, or desires, or friends, that adds kind of to the horror of the whole scenario, and it really brings you back to it in a brutal way. But it's kind of understated, right? Juxtaposed to these extremely, almost like clinical descriptions of violence upon, bodies. It's not easy, but it shouldn't be. I mean, that's why, we shouldn't just gloss over the fact that these young women are being raped and murdered. I mean, you should feel something. You should feel emotionally moved somehow. So I'm very supportive of the manner in which he has written about these murders. I think he has treated it very, very respectfully, and because it is disturbing. The whole thing is disturbing. Real life is disturbing, and it should, literature ought to feel like real life, or more than real life. Finally, the fifth story concerns the author Archimboldi, and we see how all the puzzle pieces fit in, and so on and so forth. But nothing is ever over. And Bolaño really proves that nothing is ever over. And Bolaño passed away at the ripe old age of 50 from liver disease back in 2003. I think the first edition of 2666 came out in Spanish, of course, in 2004. He was on the list to get a liver transplant, and he was near the top of the list by the time he died. I remember going to an exhibit at a museum, like a retrospective of Bolaño's work, while I was staying for a couple months in Barcelona about 2 years ago. And I remember they had several pairs, like 2 or 3 pairs of his glasses. And those were easily the most disturbing artifacts in the entire exhibit. I mean, they had plenty of personal writings and then typewriters, but his glasses, the things he wore on his face every day, the things he took off to have sex with his wife, the things through which he saw the computer or the piece of paper that he was writing his novels, the things through which he saw the world, basically. I don't know this, I'm not even trying to be poetic, I just think that's such an intimate thing to see. And I just remember being very, very moved and disturbed by that. It was the most effective reminder that death is right around the corner. I mean, I don't think Bolaño thought that some like tall gringo kid in Barcelona was going to be like staring at his glasses one day, like on the verge of tears in a museum. You don't think about shit like that, but I mean, hey. Keeps life interesting, right? I mean, if you can't tell by now, he's one of my absolute favorites. I mean, I love him. I loved him the first time I read this book. I still love him. I'll read it again, and hopefully again after that. I did my thesis film at film school based on one of his short stories called The Return. It's about a man who dies in a nightclub, but unfortunately steps out of his body, Patrick Swayze style, only to witness his body getting stolen from the morgue and taken to a very famous fashion designer who is a closet necrophiliac. I made that movie, and you can watch it. It went over really well. Link down below. I don't know if Bolaño would approve, but I think he would be entertained. As far as my own personal taste is concerned, I owe a lot to Bolaño. And I don't think this review covered near enough of him, so I'll review some more of his stuff in the future. But for now, here's a little taste. Start with this. Wherever the fuck it went. Oh yeah. Start with 2666, or start with the Savage Detectives. If you can read Spanish, read the original versions. I'm a fucking uneducated piece of shit. So I only speak English, unfortunately. Working on that. Hit me up with some comments, and please subscribe if you want more books. You need more books. You need to read more. You know it. So always remember what Mr. John Waters said. You go home with somebody and they don't have books. Oh, if they don't have Roberto Bolaño, don't fuck them. Don't fucking talk to them. Don't touch it. If they've never heard of Bolaño, just run away. Run. Other direction. Run. There's plenty more wonderful fish in the sea out there who have read or heard of Bolaño, at least. Plenty, plenty, plenty. So in true Savage Detective fashion, I'm going on a road trip down the 101 to Los Angeles, so you're gonna have to excuse me for about 5 or 6 days while I get the fuck out. Okay? Cool. Thanks. You should get out too. Yeah, you need a break. Yeah, you do. Okay. Alright. Thanks again, George. See you guys later. Have a great day.